Hey, welcome back. Let's talk about ChatGPT. How does a language model, a large language model like ChatGPT work? And how is it possible to understand it as a or as a beginner programmer? Now, what's a language model? It's a type of artificial intelligence that generates text in a similar way that humans do it. The models are trained on large data set of texts. And once it has been trained, it can start generating text on its own. You give the model a prompt, right, a starting sentence, and then it uses the understanding of language to generate the most likely next word or the next phrase. And this process is repeated over and over again until the model has generated a complete response. But how does it actually work? How does it actually decide which words to use, right? That's the whole thing. And it does this by calculating the probability of each possible word that could come next, given the words that have come before it in the prompt and that have been generated before. And the model then selects the word with the highest probability as the most likely next word. And this process of generating probabilities and selecting the most likely next word is repeated until the model has generated a complete response. That's what a large language model is, or what a language model is in general. So let's dive deeper into how ChatGPT works specifically. This is an advanced version of a series of models developed by OpenAI, and that's the company. And it's the GPT series is a specific language model that has been specifically designed to generate conversational responses that seem human-like. That's what the ChatGPT is about, right? And one of the main reasons why ChatGPT is so effective is because it has been trained on a massive data set of text. It consists of millions and more millions of web pages, books, and other sources of text. And it has been trained using a process known as unsupervised learning, where the model is basically left to learn on its own without any human intervention. Basically give it the whole internet and the whole libraries of everything and let it do its own thing. So how does ChatGPT generate responses? Well, you start by entering a prompt into ChatGPT, right? The first sentence. And then the model encodes that prompt into a numerical representation that the model can understand. This is called tokenization, where each word in your prompt, in your sentence or more sentences that you write as an input to ChatGPT, each word is represented as a unique number. And the model then processes this numerical representation of your input text using multiple layers of neural networks. We don't want to go into the details there. But basically, there are several layers, and the output of each layer is then passed on the input as the next layer, where it's further processed. And this continues until the model has processed the input data through all of its layers. And once the input data has been encoded like that and processed, the model then generates a response based on the input. And this is done, again, by predicting the probability of each token in the vocabulary, given the input sequence. So the vocabulary consists of all unique words that the model has been trained on, that it knows. And the model then predicts the probability distribution over the vocabulary, over the whole thing. And then the word with the highest probability is selected as the next word in the response. And then this process is repeated for either a predefined number of steps or until the model has generated a complete response. So it's worth noting that the output of this model is not always perfect, as you maybe experienced yourself. There's often errors or inconsistencies in the response generated by models like ChatGPT. One of the main challenges is the potential for the model to generate biased or offensive content. And this can happen if the model is trained on a data set that contains biased language, or if the model is fine-tuned on a biased set of prompts. And it's important to know that the model itself is not biased, but rather it's reflecting the biases that exist in the data that it was trained on. Another challenge is that the model may not always understand the context of a conversation. This can result in a model generating strange or nonsensical responses, or even responses that are completely unrelated to the prompt. And there's also the challenge of hallucination, where the model may generate responses that contain information that was never present in the input prompt. And this can happen if the model has learned certain patterns or associations between words that may not necessarily make sense in the context of the prompt. So researchers are exploring various techniques to improve the quality of the data used to train the model and develop methods to detect and correct biases in the data, incorporating external knowledge sources to help the model better, quote unquote, understand context. Ultimately, the goal is to continue to improve the capabilities and accuracy of language models like ChatGPT while addressing the ethical implications that arise from their use. So, to summarize, language models like ChatGPT are a very powerful tool for generating text, and they have many potential applications in fields like customer service, education, entertainment. And there are still many challenges to overcome, but it's clear that, for me at least, language models are going to play a very, very important role in our lives in the years to come. That's why it's important to understand what's going on. That's why it's important to realize that they are not aware, quote unquote. It's really just a list, an increasing list of words that are basically put after each other based on statistical probabilities. That's all that the thing is doing. It's just taking words out of its vocabulary and thinking about, and not thinking, determining, calculating what's the next most probable word that follows my input prompt and the output that has been already generated. Okay? That's how ChatGPT and other language models work.